just as a tangent to this, I think that poor argumentation tactics can work if you know your opponent. I remember watching William F. Buckley and some of these other debaters, and if he had a skilled debater like James Baldwin, he couldn't get away with this. But I think Buckley actually used some tactics that would be considered poor argumentation just because he knew his opponent well and he could get away with it.
Yeah,
they wouldn't notice it.
He set snares, and they would walk into it. And this is one of the reasons why, just to speak politically, I disagreed with William F. Buckley's political opinions 9 times out of 10, but I admired the man, even when I knew he was wrong, even when he did hold what you would call elitist, racist views, because he was so goddamn smart in a lot of things. People talk about Buckley and how Gore Vidal supposedly got the better of him in the 1968. If you've ever seen, there's a great documentary about William F. Buckley and Gore Vidal and their debates.
Best of Enemies?
Yeah, something like that. So that's
I watched it.
Yeah, that's a good documentary. And really, I think people always say that Gore Vidal won because most of the people that make these kinds of documentaries are liberals. But I think at very worst, Buckley held him to a draw, and I'd say Buckley actually got the better of him. The reason they say Buckley lost is
I didn't watch all of the. I think they debated for something like 9 hours, so yeah. I don't remember watching all of it, but I seen the early clips, and I think Buckley wasn't really prepared for Vidal, so he lost the early ones. But I think that he caught up and was winning towards the end. He did have his blow up towards the end too, when Gore Vidal called him a crypto Nazi.
Yeah,
but that was just him in a fury.
Yeah, and that's the thing that people remember, those kinds of moments where Buckley lost and said, I'm going to knock you in the damn face.
Here's someone who committed a far worse philosophical fallacy by just name calling essentially as a way to stir him up, and yet Buckley made. I don't agree with most of his points. I think I agree probably with Vidal more. But, Vidal has a sort of a dilettante quality to him. And his views aren't as unique as Buckley's either. Even though Buckley was wrong for the most part, it's almost as if Vidal is sort of drawing from the same well of libtards, whereas Buckley was uniquely conservative.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. Like, the Firing Line has its own YouTube channel, and I've watched probably about 20 to 25 hours of it over the last 2 months, here and there, just listening in the background as I'm gathering notes for a play or something. And if you listen to Buckley talk about social issues, even if you disagree with him, he's always allows his opponents to make their points, even if he disagrees with them. He's generally he's not the arch conservative on a lot of things that you would expect. There's a show that he did with a guy who was one of these people who thinks blacks would congenitally inferior mentally. The guy's name I forget. He was a Nobel Prize winner, but he had this bizarre theory outside the realm of his expertise. And even Buckley is really just sort of sets a number of snares for this guy to just walk into and trip himself up. So Buckley's a fascinating figure. I think he's gotten a bum rap because people say, well, because 55, 60 years ago when he wrote his famous book, or 70 years ago now, God and Man at Yale or whatever it was called, that somehow inevitably led to Trump. That's a load of shit. Donald Trump has nothing in common. Donald Trump is actually someone who, for most of his public persona, claimed to be a liberal. He was for abortion rights. He was for a lot of the stuff. He's a New Yorker, so New Yorkers are not that conservative. But he's an opportunist. He seized power, and he's the consummate city slicker who's conned all these gullible country bumpkins to vote for him. So anyway.
Buckley, too, never resorted to some of the nastiness that Gore Vidal often did in any of his debates. He's very respectful. I don't think he was respectful with Gore Vidal, but that's because shots were fired first from Vidal.
Yeah.
And Buckley simply responded.
Yeah. And, I agree.